Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bio. Today's guest is someone who knows exactly what makes people pay attention. Carol Driver has spent nearly 30 years working as a journalist and editor, and for the last 8 years, she's been helping business owners secure high-profile national press coverage consistently. Her clients have appeared everywhere from Forbes and The Times to This Morning and the Daily Mail. But this conversation isn't just about PR, it's about visibility, confidence, storytelling, and why some people become known while others stay invisible. So if you've ever wondered what journalists are looking for, how to tell better stories, or how to stand out without sounding salesy, this episode is for you. Welcome to the show, Carol.
Thank you. And thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, all true, isn't it? Now, Carol, you've spent almost 3 decades around stories and headlines. What first made you fall in love with journalism?
Oh, gosh. I know. When you say 3 decades, I'm like, oh, my goodness, that is a long time. I am officially old. So actually, I fell in love with words. So back when I went to school, when it was all in black and white, you were either a words person or a numbers person. And I loved a story. I was a words person. And when it came to sort of, deciding what to do at university, I read about a journalism and media course, and I thought that's for me. That brings in everything I love, which is talking to people, finding out the real stories behind people, and my love of writing as well. So it was a win.
And fast forward to now, and obviously you've kind of had a bit of a pivot, but able to use that expertise so well. I've got so many questions to ask you because I know that listeners and viewers, they'll find this topic super, super interesting. To kick us off, what would you say is the difference between someone who gets noticed and someone who gets ignored?
In terms of when you're pitching to a journalist, the people who get noticed are the people who are press ready and who have brilliant exclusive ideas and that they've done their homework. So they've researched the publication, they've researched the journalist, and they're making it very easy for that journalist or editor to say yes to them.
And what are your top tips around pitching? Like what stands out? Because I don't know whether you can give us any numbers around how many pitches the average journalist is receiving each day. I suspect it's ridiculous.
It is. So I used to be female editor at Mail Online for about 4 years. And at any one time, I have this figure in mind, but I'm sure it was many more. I would have 60,000 unread emails in my inbox because there simply weren't enough hours in the day to read every single email and to do my job. We were a big team. We were producing sometimes 30, 40 stories a day, plus forward planning. I'm looking after 10, 13 writers, producing all those stories and trying to commission as well. So tips when you're pitching a journalist, and just to say, it's probably got even more demanding now because teams are much smaller and you will find that journalists are now covering more areas. So they are juggling more and more stories. But that means that they are also looking for stories. So it's still really important to get in touch with journalists when you have a good story. The tips are, as I've just said, to just do your homework first of all. Make sure you're pitching the right publication for that story and make sure that it's the right journalist to pitch to. Otherwise, it will go into a black hole. You'll never hear, and maybe you'll feel disheartened that, it was a no. So do yourself a favour at the very beginning and do your homework. For your pitch, make sure you introduce yourself succinctly. And this sounds obvious, but some people will have quite flowery job descriptions that are baffling unless you really know what that person does. And journalists, I think there's a really good framework by Daniel Priestley, which is something along the lines of name, same, game, fame, something like that.
Well.
Yes. So categorize yourself in a way that a journalist can immediately see that you are right for their section and that you are the person to speak to about this particular topic. So this is where you bring in any credibility that you're award-winning or you've got a best-selling book or you've helped thousands of people or you've been doing this for a number of years. All of those things that make that journalist think, right, you're the person for me. Then with your story pitch, it's really important to have a hook. Why should the journalist be writing about this now? And there's so many reasons. It's really easy to find now. Go and find an awareness day or new figures or statistics that have been released about what you want to talk about. Or this is a really good tip. Go and find the number of Google searches for that particular topic and whether they've increased year after year. I've had stories commissioned in the likes of the Telegraph by saying, look, X amount of million people are searching for this topic every year. And if it's an online outlet, then that's valuable to them to know that that story is something that lots of people are interested in. Then with your actual pitch, keep it really short and sweet with really concise details. Do not use AI. What AI does is really give you an overview of a story. And what makes your story different to everybody else's will be those key details. And they're the details that journalists normally pull out for a headline. So make sure it's detailed. Make sure all your best bits are at the top of the story. So imagine you're with a friend in a bar somewhere and you're recounting the story to them. What bits would you tell them first? What are the most interesting things? And put that at the very top of your pitch. Keep it, as I say, short and sweet, maybe kind of 8 bullet points or 4 or so paragraphs, just so the journalist can get a real feel for what the story is. We don't expect a pitch to be 100% polished. I would personally rather get a pitch that is almost there rather than a pitch that's been written by AI. A couple of things not to do. Don't just write a stream of consciousness and hope that the journalist is going to pitch out the angle, find the angle for you, because they don't have the time. And also don't do, which somebody did this a couple of months ago. They said, oh, can I send you a video pitch because I'm better explaining it that way? And I was like, okay, fine. A 30-minute video dropped into my inbox. And I just said, I don't even have time to watch 30 minutes of TV.
Wow. And what would be your advice around the subject line? So, as someone that had 60,000 unread emails, what's the subject line that's going to get your attention and make you open it in the first place?
So, look, there is a skill and no skill to doing this in equal measure, because the main thing is to stand out as much as possible. I always it's the Mail Online in me, but I love a shouty caps word. I love an exclusive in the title, because no journalist wants a story that's done the rounds 10 times, that can't find a home, or that's been sent to hundreds or, however many journalists. We want an exclusive. So if there's an exclusive in the title, and if you've had a go at writing a nice short headline, that's probably good enough. But what we don't want is expert available, or, press release says XYZ, or survey, because it's just so generic. Really pull out those golden nuggets, as my journalism tutor would say back in the day, because they're the things that really make a journalist want to read more.
And with that bit around using exclusivity and offering that story to one outlet, at what point do you go, right, this person hasn't come back to me, and then offer it to someone else? How do you work out the best time to do that?
I always say follow up. It may be the case that it hasn't been read. It may be the case that it's just got buried in the inbox, which happens. I always say leave it kind of 3 days. And then just do a polite follow-up, let me know either way. This is with you as an exclusive. Let me know either way if it's of interest. And then maybe give it another 3 days, and then repitch it, retailor it, and pitch it to another publication. However, I've secured so many commissions by just doing that polite follow-up. And the journalist said, oh my gosh, just, hadn't seen this at all. But also so for one of my clients, they were a decluttering duo. They had a new Bloomsbury book. I pitched the Times, and she came back, asked a few questions, and then went quiet. So fair enough, it happens. Over the next year, they were in the press every single month without fail, on an hour-long special, Woman's Hour, in the Mail, in loads of publications, the Telegraph, women's magazines. 1 year later, almost to the day, that Times journalist replied and said, are they available for an interview? And my client's got an entire page in the Sunday Times and online specifically about them. So sometimes if it doesn't happen immediately, it's not to say that it won't happen and that you're not now on the radar of that journalist. And it might be then that when the time is right for them, obviously she had probably seen their profile grow, and, when she came to search for them, she could easily see there was lots of coverage. So it made it more of an obvious yes to her.
That's so interesting. That is so interesting. It's just funny how it works and how, yeah, you might not be on someone's radar at that point in time, but, they get to it, or maybe they've seen the coverage elsewhere and realize that they're really interesting, perhaps. Carol, have you ever worked with someone who thought that they had nothing interesting to say, and then you've then completely transformed how visible they've become?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. People say to me, I'll give you an example. My client, let's see, maybe about 4 months ago now, I had my first call with her and she said, well, I don't think I've got a story. And anyway, so the Telegraph sent one of their best writers to her house for 3 hours, sent a photographer for a shoot, and she got this incredible write-up on the Telegraph. And I always think, because we live our lives, and to us, our lives are just normal and, what we experience day to day. But it's always good to get a second pair of eyes just to, have a look and see. I've been a journalist for a long time. It's really embedded in me to speak to somebody and almost sometimes to think in headlines or be able to think, right, there's a story there or there's a story there. So it's always worthwhile to speak to somebody else and just get a second opinion, because chances are we've all led a unique life. So there are stories there. It doesn't necessarily need to be that there's this huge, transformation story that gets the kind of big headlines or the tabloid headlines. It might be that you have more of a women's magazine story, or you might have more of a glossy magazine story, or you might have more business-led stories. So there's always a story there. It's just finding the right one and the right publications for you.
Why do you think so many brilliant business owners and leaders stay invisible for years?
It could come down to the imposter syndrome, to not wanting to bring their head above the parapet. It's not wanting to say the wrong thing. It's worrying about how they'll be perceived. It's worrying that they don't really have a story. And also it can come down to not really knowing what to do about their PR. A lot of entrepreneurs who I speak to at the moment, they're putting themselves forwards for journalist requests and being really reactive. And then they're sort of led to believe that that's a PR strategy. And as you and I know, that's not a PR strategy. Helping a journalist out, grateful, thank you very much. But a PR strategy is so much more than that. And that can feel kind of overwhelming. How I sort of consider it now is that you've got different platforms. So you've got social media platforms, then you've got publication platforms, if we think of it like that. And it's another element that you can't miss from your marketing strategy. It's so vital now, including because of the rise of AI and more people searching for recommendations for people to work with. If you don't have that online coverage, you're not going to be brought up as much as your competitor who is in the press. So it is really vital now.
I totally agree. What are your thoughts around two things? One, around publications, and anyone that's watching will see I've just done an inverted commas there, but publications that no one's ever really heard of, where they maybe get in touch with you and say, would you like this feature? It'll only cost you $1,000 or whatever it may be. So what are your thoughts on those? But also, what are your thoughts linked to that, I guess, around getting coverage that's not necessarily about what is going to make you the expert? So for example, I see people who might be in, just as an example, the Metro or the Sun, and it's about, something that's a bit more sensationalist, it's a bit more personal, and it doesn't link to their business at all. Like, do these things still add value, or do they actually damage your credibility as a serious business person?
Yeah, so they're two of my bugbears. So thanks for bringing those up. So on the first one, there's a bunch of kind of free sites out there that you can pay to go and upload yourself to, and that is what it is. But they're not credible. They're not the publications that everybody is reading. They're not the ones that we know and we trust. And it's not earned media. And the benefit of doing PR is to get that trusted third-party seal of approval so that you've earned your position in that publication because you've had somebody who's entirely independent look at you, look at your story, say, yes, you are who you say you are. I've verified your story and we're going to run it. That's the entire point. So if you pay to be featured by a publication, that's advertorial. That legally should be marked as advertorial or sponsored. And then that takes away from having earned media. Secondly, in terms of putting yourself forward for any request, this kind of ties in with what I was saying earlier in terms of entrepreneurs who are doing their own PR, and they might be in a pitching group or see journal requests or have signed up to like editorial or response source or something like that. That's great if you know what you're doing, if you've got a PR strategy in mind and you're putting yourself forward for requests that are relevant to you, your business, your PR aims and goals and where you want to be seen. However, if you're just raising your hand to case study requests for journalists, which are totally nothing to do with you or your business or your PR goals and aims, then it's not going to bring you any closer to what you want to achieve. What that either does is lead to that person then thinking, well, I did PR and it didn't work for me, which isn't the case because it's not actually PR, it's helping out a journalist. Again, very grateful. Thank you very much. And I've spoken to so many people about this recently. There was one, she ran a tutoring organisation and one of her members of staff put themselves forwards for something to do with dentistry. And it was just so misaligned that it would never have any kind of comeback to them. And then another brilliant entrepreneur who I love, I just did the India Tuk-Tuk Challenge, raising money for charity. In the back of the tuk-tuk chatting about PR, and she said, oh, I've done loads. I've been in this publication for this publication for that. And I said, are any of those, do they have anything to do with your business? And she was like, oh, no, nothing. And I said, okay, what this does do, and I know this because this is what I used to do, when somebody puts themselves forwards for case study requests for journalists time and again, it gets to the point where editors then say, oh no, we've seen enough of this person. They seem to fit this brief, this brief, this brief. Let's not use them anymore. So this is what happens. So it can be really damaging because you have your stories and your expertise, and that's kind of collateral for you. So when you use that and share those stories, it needs to be, if you're doing PR for you or for your brand, it needs to be in a way that's going to be aligned and share the message that you want to share.
That makes total sense. And is reassuring as well, because I guess that's the kind of thing we'd be saying to our clients, because when people are Googling you, if they're then on that news tab and it's all these random things that just feel, they're not in alignment with what you're actually meant to be standing for. Actually, it's just confusing. So yeah, I get that. From a journalist perspective, what would instantly make you interested in someone's story?
It's usually something that I haven't read before. So it's not just the same thing. Obviously, after 30 years, the same stories do come around time and again. They can be seasonal, they can be a type of story. Usually, so I focus now mainly on case study led stories. So it can be a business story, it can be a health story, it can be a lifestyle story, but it's normally focusing on an individual or a few people within that story. So I'm always looking for something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, that I haven't read before, that's got real kind of detail in it. And we all love a transformation story. It doesn't need to be the whole, going from being homeless to going through this challenge to now being a multimillionaire. But some variation of that. I think people love to read those stories, and they're the types of stories that stay with us, because I guess it gives, if you're in a job that you dislike and you read somebody who's similar to you and they've gone and done X, Y, Z, and there's the pot of gold at the end of their story, then it kind of gives you, it's an inspiration, isn't it? It's something that you then actually could go and do. Or if somebody's been through a health problem and, it's something rare, or they've coped with it in a different way, and then they're normally speaking out so that they can help, somebody not to go through some similar to them. So anything along the lines of that, really. And I know that might sound sort of vague, but it has to be something that we're not reading every day, that has really strong imagery. We need to have photos. I've known the best stories in the world to fall through fall down at the final hurdle because they don't have the photos to support it. So it needs to come really as a package, something we're not reading every day, something that's quite unique, and they've got the images to back it up. And it's an exclusive.
And are you seeing any trends in the kind of stories that are cutting through in 2026?
Yeah, so I think we still love the expert-led stories. We still love those behind the scenes. I'm an expert in XYZ. Here are 10 things that you didn't know about. Because as a journalist, it's not my job to know everything about everything. It's my job to bring in those credible experts who can shine a light on, their expertise or their industry. So those stories still do really well. The real life stories do really well as well in terms of those transformation stories, starting from here, going through this, going through that. Anything AI related, anything that's got a really good hook to things that we're enjoying. So it might be, I'll give you an example of, I held an event with a TV producer last year, and he very much involved in daytime TV. And I was told TikTok is the main platform for TV producers. So if you've got good videos on TikTok and you've got lots of fans and followers, that's what they kind of look for. So that's still doing well. As always, it comes down to a really strong, a really good story. And I think that will always be the case.
And that makes total sense. And that's the theme that is definitely coming through loud and strong. Carol, we're almost out of time. So I'm just going to have a really super quick fire round with you. Okay. So one word every journalist hates in a pitch.
Journey.
TV, print, or podcast interviews?
For me personally, or clients?
Give me both.
Okay. All three. I can't choose. TV for huge impact, print for credibility and longevity, and podcast because it's a great way. If you've got a topic that you think should be spoken about, go onto a podcast and really talk it out.
Okay, love it. And finally, best headline you've ever seen?
Oh my gosh. Best headline. I was going to do one about the beard baubles, but
what?
We ran this story on Mail Online many years ago, and it was about someone had created Christmas beard baubles. And the reason why it stays with me is in no time at all, it had 250,000 shares. And obviously that was a headline that made an impact. It was all a bit bonkers. Other headlines that have stayed with me, what Coca-Cola does to your body in 30 minutes, things like that.
Carol, if anyone watching or listening hasn't come across you before, where's the best place for them to find you?
Come and join my free Facebook group, which is called How to Make the Headlines with Carol Driver. There's lots of free tips and advice in there.
Amazing. And we're going to pop a link to that in the show notes to make it super easy for people to find you. Carol, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you're serious about growing your profile, take our free profile assessment quiz to see where you're at right now and get hints and tips on how to improve your score. You'll find the link to the quiz in the show notes. If you've enjoyed the episode, it would be mint if you'd subscribe, like, and leave a review. See you next Monday.